Welcome, everyone, to Climate Action Now's second of two forums for candidates in Northampton's upcoming city elections. My name is Adele Franks. I'm a steering committee member of Climate Action Now. And first, I'm just going to put this night's forum into a global context. And then I'll give you the lay of the land of how we're going to proceed tonight. To put what we're doing tonight into a global context, we have never been this close to the destruction of the livable world by doing nothing other than continuing to live our lives the way we're accustomed to, that is, by maintaining the status quo. In fact, the UN Secretary General just called the latest report by the International Panel on Climate Change a code red for humanity, with only massive and immediate cuts in carbon emissions capable of averting a tipping point. This means changing how we live. If we don't make big changes, the feedback loops will become more severe and climate chaos will increase. Massive civil disruption and ecological breakdown will undoubtedly occur. And the young people of the world are very dismayed by our non-action. A recent survey around the world of youth between the ages of 16 and 25 showed that 83% feel that humans have failed to care for the planet, and 2/3 believe government responses to climate change are failing young people. Fortunately, as many astute observers have noted, a unique human characteristic is our ability to cooperate and work to solve problems together. We have to use that ability to take on this biggest threat to human well-being that we've ever had to face. Tonight, let's ask hard questions of our mayoral candidates about how they will help us do this. Tonight's forum features 4 candidates for Northampton mayor who will be on the preliminary ballot next Tuesday, September 28th. And 2 of whom will advance to the general election on Tuesday, November 2nd. Gina Shara, Shanna Fischel, Mark Warner, and Roy Martin. I am going to briefly introduce Climate Action Now as an organization, and then I'm going to lay out the flight plan for this evening, and then turn things over to Ben Weil, who will be our moderator for the evening. Climate Action Now is a grassroots, all-volunteer group dedicated to building a powerful regional climate justice movement through organizing, action, and public education. Founded in 2012, we have now 2,500 supporters, and we fiercely advocate for bold climate policy at all levels of government, including municipal, state, and federal. And we have successfully rallied grassroots action to help stop construction of the biomass Palmer plant in Springfield. We've successfully rallied grassroots action to help defeat a large cross-state pipeline and the expansion of natural gas supply to Northampton. So we welcome you tonight, and we urge you to join our movement. There's a lot more to be done. Please feel free to visit our website, climateactionnowma.org. And on to tonight's logistics. Only the candidates and the moderator will have their audio and video on. Everyone else, please keep your microphone and video off so we can pay close attention to the candidates. We are recording this forum and live streaming it on the following platforms: TV Channel 12 and Northampton Open Media's YouTube page, where you can also access recordings after tonight. Links to these platforms will be placed in the chat. The chat button, the chat tab at the bottom of your screen, will serve 2 important functions. If you need to report or ask about tech issues, select Tech. If you would like to submit a question for the audience question part of the evening, select Questions/Adele. And we may also be popping some relevant links into the chat for your use. If you would like to access the closed captions, select the CC option at the bottom of your Zoom screen and click Show Subtitles. So the flight plan for tonight is as follows. First, the candidates will be offered 3 minutes to make opening statements. Second, Ben is going to ask candidates 3 or 4 rounds of questions with 2-minute replies, and in some cases, discretionary follow-up questions. And finally, Ben will ask as many audience questions as he's able to in the last half hour, with 2-minute replies allowed for each. Thank you everyone for showing up and for your willingness to listen, to learn, to ask hard questions, and to exercise your vote. Now I'm going to exit and pass the forum over to our moderator, Ben Weil. Ben is a UMass Sustainable Building Scientist, a Leeds resident, and a member of Northampton's Energy and Sustainability Commission. Ben.
Hi, thank you very much, and welcome candidates and welcome audience. So the first part of this is simply candidate introductions. So you'll each have 3 minutes to introduce yourself and your candidacy. What do you want voters to know about you? And though it's not required, you can share your own perspective in connection to the subject of climate, energy, and the environment. And I'll call on each of you in turn, going to Gina Louise Shara first.
Hey, good evening. Huge thanks to Climate Action Now, not only for hosting these important municipal forums, but also for all the heroic work you're doing to protect our planet and our community. My name is Gina Louise Shara. I've been a city councilor for nearly 8 years, and I'm currently serving as city council president and councilor at large. I also have a full-time job as communications manager for Pathlight, which serves people in Western Mass with developmental disabilities, intellectual disabilities, and autism. And I'm a proud public school mom with 1 daughter at Bridge Street School and 1 at JFK. Northampton should be a place where anyone can make a life for themselves and comfortably retire. The biggest issue facing Northampton is how to fulfill that vision and make our city more affordable, accessible, equitable, and sustainable. I'm running for mayor and asking for your vote on September 28th because I have the experience and the dedication to turn that vision into reality. The biggest threat to that vision is the biggest threat to all on this planet. We're in a climate emergency now, and it is, of course, not just an existential threat to humans. The need for action is beyond urgent because the damage is already being done. Northampton must lead because every town, city, county, state, country must lead if we're to mitigate the havoc caused by decades of burning fossil fuels. We have a moral obligation to do our part, and I believe that every bit helps. For our own community's sake, we also need to build a sustainable city, a climate resilient city, a clean energy powered city. We cannot be a city where the effects of climate change disproportionately harm our fellow community members with the least resources. Northampton can only be a place where anyone can make a life for themselves if it's a place where any and every resident can breathe freely, walk, bike safely, find shade in the heat, and shelter in the storm. As a counselor, I have worked on and supported zoning regulations that encourage green building residential buildings. I was a voting member for the city on the International Code Council and voted on the International Energy Efficiency Code to strengthen requirements. The twin goals of sustainability and equity must permeate through nearly every decision our city has to make: how we build, how we repair, how we budget, how we power. That work has begun, and we have a sustainable Northampton plan, but the plan's goals of municipal net carbon neutrality by 2030 and citywide by 2050 are not aggressive enough. If I become your mayor, I will work and collaborate with all departments to determine everything that can be done that we're not yet doing in order to accelerate that timetable and fully transition away from fossil fuels. And I hope to become a 100% renewable energy powered city. Without a national and international framework, without sufficient resources from federal and state government, what a municipality can do will always be limited, but we should not limit our ambitions or our efforts. And we certainly cannot wait for aggressive leadership from above. I'm eager to hit the ground running, and I've done all I can to prepare myself for the job. In addition to serving as council president, I also chair the finance committee overseeing our budget. That's where our progressive ideals become progressive realities. Responsibly managing the budget requires expertise so we can maintain our AAA bond rating, borrow at a low interest rate, position ourselves for grant funding, and stretch our dollars and maximize our resources. Of course, tackling the climate crisis is not a one-woman job. We need to work together as a community, and if we're going to meet our sustainability goals ahead of schedule. If you haven't worked with me before, please ask someone who has, and you'll hear that bringing people together to get things done is what I love most to do. I'm committed to achieving true sustainability and equity, and I'm ready to
Louise, we probably want to wrap it up. Thank you, though.
Thanks.
Next, we go to Mark Warner. Who is not unmuted yet.
Okay, I'm not on, oh, should I start over? Okay, hi. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Climate Action Now. This is an important subject. And it is one of the key issues why I think it's important that you have somebody with key management experience in the office of mayor. Northampton has a strong mayor form of government. It is the mayor who goes and sets the initial budget. He's the mayor who goes and leads the departments, who goes and sets the priorities for the city and makes sure that the things we do are the right things for our city and that we do them as efficiently as possible. Climate change is the key issue facing the future of Northampton and the United States and the planet as a whole. We have three options here. We can deal with mitigation to try and stave off the worst of greenhouse gases. We can strive for adaptation as a second choice, making sure that we're prepared for the resilience and for the climate change that does happen. That we have here in the city, we have the infrastructure that can deal with worsening storms, greater heat. We have the facilities to go and deal with all the water issues and potential flooding. And if those don't work, then we're stuck with the third option, misery. And this is something which is, as Adele pointed out before, an alternative that we really do not want to leave to the future Americans, many of whom are really alive today. So my children are part of that as well. So the stakes are high here. It is something that calls for management, but not just goals. Management does matter here. And this is where it's not just progressive values. It is understanding how to go and take those values, how to go and take the goals that we have towards mitigation, goals that we have towards adaptation, and put them into place. There will be dozens of federal, state, local, probably some private foundation funds that will come to the city to help us deal with these things, to help us deal with these issues. And all of these will have different requirements in terms of eligible projects. There will be issues in terms of legal issues, equity concerns, revenue predictability will change for each of those. There will be different project submission requirements, evaluation criteria, time limitations for programming and for spending the funds. These are things that do require somebody who has the management skills. I have those management skills. I've been doing this for 29 years. 29 years as the president of Warner Transportation Consulting Incorporated. Most recently, just a year ago, I helped Los Angeles Metro, the largest transit agency in the United States in terms of bus operations, go and prepare for its rail construction program. And all of this was something that dealt with not just the management of projects, but management of expectations as well. Coming up with ways to make sure they could build these projects in ways that was efficient and would solve the problems as most expeditiously as possible.
Next to Shauna Fishel.
Am I on? Yes, thank you, Ben. And thank you, Climate Action Now, and thank you all the voters for making space for this important discussion today. My name is Shana Fishel, and I am very proud to be running for mayor for this wonderful city. I have rich experience working as a special education teacher in Boston Public Schools, working directly with students with chronic special needs, where I was also a teacher union representative during negotiation years. Currently, I work full-time as an outreach social worker in Holyoke, serving Western Mass adults who experience both chronic mental health and substance use and face homelessness. In this role, I work extensively with the Department of Mental Health and providers across Western Mass. In these roles, I encounter the harmful impact of municipal decisions on the most vulnerable. And I have vowed to commit my life to work towards justice and equity. I have volunteered extensively with Planned Parenthood and Habitat for Humanity, among other justice-oriented organizations like Tapestry Health and Massachusetts Fair Housing Center locally. I'm a certified sex educator, group facilitator and trainer, entrepreneur, activist, community builder, and parent. Lately, I co-founded the first Northampton Community Fridge, or Fridge. You can find it on the Florence Bike Path, a mutual aid project to decrease food insecurity and food waste in our area. Everything I do, my Personal and on-the-ground experience will inform my decisions as mayor to benefit Northamptonite who hold marginalized identities, those with functional differences, seniors, and the working class. And especially when we're facing climate change, these identities, indeed people, need our attention the most. We cannot stand by and see development strip land of her resources, witness city staff, police, and bulldoze cherry trees on Warfield Place, create devices processes on Main Street redesign, and use rezoning to permit unsustainable luxury homes like what's happening in Bay State Village. Hopefully, we have time to stop the destruction of the beloved St. John Cantius Church. It has never been more important to be determined towards community equity and justice on the intersection of climate emergency. I commit to good planning, better communication, and genuine empathy so we can be a true progressive city. A vote for me is a vote for livable economies and a housing first model, excellent education, improved access to special education, and better pay for teachers, investment in mental health services, and fully funding the Department of Community Care. Implemented a municipal Green New Deal and climate forward investment and assessment in every municipal decision. I want to ensure our budget is sustainable and just so our city may flourish, and our community will thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, to Roy Martin.
You got me on?
Yes.
Okay. All right. My name is Roy C. Martin. I am running for mayor here in Northampton. Now, I hear everyone saying the same thing, right? You know, it's all in the budget. It's in, they are the mayor if they're elected, and, you know, they will be leading the city. Well, I feel about it a different way. I feel that we have a lot of students coming up, right? They're all working on sustainability of the city of Northampton, right? But not just that, right? Without all the other cities around, Northampton would be nothing, right? You know, because they can't do it all alone. So what we have to do to be sustainable is make sure that we have other cities, other parts of the state, and other states, right? This is something that is completely out of the realm of being here and now. Being the mayor is the only person to say something. The mayor is the only one to make the budget. We have budget people all over the place. Every one of our, yeah, right, I lost my train of thought, sorry, all right? But every department head makes their own budget, and then they come in, right, and they talk to that budget to the mayor, all right? Now, the mayor just can't go all willy-nilly and just say, okay, here's the budget, all done, all right? They have to go through that budget. And so everything that is sustainable in the city, all right, including our youth in the city is our youth of the future. They are the future of the city, and they are working on this already, all right? I've seen things, I've heard things, right? And I've heard things from a lot of the high school kids that are working on things like that. They are working on keeping our city alive, but also the college kids that are working, the Amherst college kids, the college kids down here in Northampton. Right, you know, they're all working together. They want to keep alive everything in the city, but not just the city of Northampton. All right, we're talking the city, the state, the federal government, everything all has to work together. Otherwise, you know, we're going to be eating crap, as you might say, all right, because what are we going to have for gardens, right? Crap. So anyways, right, that's all I have to say is that together, we can all do it. Together, but not one person alone. Just because you're the mayor, don't think you have every right to have everything done the way you want to do it and no one else. With that, I got it.
Great, thank you very much. All right, now we move on to round one, in which I'm going to ask you all the same question, and you'll each have 2 minutes to answer it. And let's see the order here. Just want to get the order correct. Great. So I'm going to read you the question. So the city's climate resiliency and regeneration plan passed earlier this year provides an aspirational goals for addressing our climate crisis, but is non-binding, has a weak target of reaching citywide carbon neutrality by 2050, which just matches the state, and provides no detailed guidance for achieving that target. How and when will you establish timelines, objectives, and metrics for reaching zero emissions? How will you structure municipal government to best coordinate this massive interdepartmental and citywide effort? And how will residents be able to follow and even challenge the speed and efficacy of progress? And I'll go first to Shana Fishel.
Thank you, Ben. Am I on? Yes, thank you. So the first thing that I will do as mayor is issue a climate emergency declaration, which is going across the globe, and we need to declare this so the urgency is felt in all departments and in all parts of our budget. Within my first year and earlier if possible, I will establish a detailed guidelines and not just goals. Just like the city lighting code that is not fully implemented, we need to ensure climate-forward practices that are implemented. We need resident-led committees to hold municipal leaders accountable throughout the departments. And so as such, I will reverse the administrative code that Mayor Narco has put in place to guarantee that residents may be chosen as chairs of committees. This will ensure also that no new vehicles are bought without consideration of their emissions, like happened recently on City Council. And that massive projects like Main Street Redesign consider all stakeholders much earlier in the process, considering nature and resources as members of our community. And we need to ensure net zero in material, design, and construction, and make it accessible for residents who are doing that, exactly those things, and then want the municipality support the process. Within our budget, as it stands as a pivotal document of our system, I commit to include an energy system balance to detail how we use our resources, which resources we generate, and how our city budget is used to address climate goals in an expedited manner. A few specific examples I want to achieve as mayor is, first of all, complete the net zero goal by 2030, reduce greenhouse gas emission and make sure that our fleet is fully electrical with a wind turbine investment, increase energy efficiency and resource conservation, and explore options for heat and energy exchange, as well as geothermal batteries. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And so I'd like to take that same question to Mark Warner.
I like the idea of the metrics. And the first thing you need to do is be able to measure where you are now. And once we do that, not just for the city buildings and city vehicles, but for the city as a whole, let's go and work with the utilities to understand what it is that we are consuming in terms of energy and what it is we're consuming in terms of various other resources that contribute to greenhouse gases. And then with each of those, we do have a blueprint. The city's resiliency plan, the climate resiliency and regeneration plan that the city put together a couple of years ago, really is I think it's a terrific document. It doesn't clearly establish this is what we will do when, but it does establish what our options are and what the range of costs are and what the consequences would be. And it does also give us a sense of what we would have to change in terms of actions by the city itself that it can do with its own departmental rules, what it would take in terms of changing ordinances, and what it would take in terms of money. So I think that's the first thing, that's what you want to do. You want to be able to go and clearly understand what it is you need to change. And then as the money comes in, as from the federal, state, or private funds, if there's public-private operations we can tap into, let's go and do that. That's what's going on in our solar array on top of the old landfill. But there's also a way to with this metrics as well that I think can keep the heat up on everybody. Let's make it very public, not just on the website, but on the side of City Hall. Here's our consumption in 2021. Here's our goal in 2030. Every year, let's go and update it. And let's also make it clear to the residents, here are the constraints that we're dealing with. There are some issues that are going to be pushing where people are going to be anxious for further change, but there are constraints, not just in terms of policy, but in terms of the ability to get the staff we need to introduce these. Let's have a contest with Amherst and the other cities to figure out what they can do as well. Are we doing all we can? Make it a challenge and make it accountable to all department heads to make sure that this is something that they view as important to the mayor and to the city as a whole.
That's great. Thank you. So I'll direct the same question to Roy Martin.
Okay, am I on? Am I on?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, I got something that's short but sweet. We as a city have very limited control over state and federal. As a city, we can make recommendations and can institute small and slow increment things, which if done by the whole can make a big difference. In other words, just like Mark said, right? If Amherst and Hadley and all the other cities around us go along with us, right? Slowly we can get ahead. But if not, right? And we're the only ones standing here with one thing, like so like Mark said, picture on the side of City Hall, right? Or better yet, let's have a thermometer down in the park, all right? You know, and that would show what we're doing. But what are other cities doing? What are other places? Just like I said before, right? It's not just about Northampton. It's about every city around us, every city in the state, every state in the country. Everybody has to be in on this, right? And everybody has to work slowly on this. So what can we do, right? We're left, you know, either a can of worms with no place to go, or we're the one little city that's taking people ahead. That's it for me.
Great, thank you. And last to Gina Louise Shara.
Thank you. The Sustainable Northampton Plan, which has guided our actions for over the last decade, includes the charge to develop a biennial resilience and regeneration action plan that includes an annual and long-term carbon budget. And it calls for us to move continually forward towards carbon neutrality. And to do so, we need to develop a streamlined process to collect energy use and emissions data for tracking and reporting. I supported the funding for this plan, and it's an important roadmap, but I'd like to see us push farther and faster towards renewable energy, but not just carbon neutral. I'm interested in exploring collaboration with other municipalities for regional green power generation. If the voters of Northampton choose me, before I'm sworn in, I will begin working with the outgoing mayor and the heads of planning, sustainability, central services, public works, any other relevant departments on a tracking system that is transparent so that the people of Northampton can be involved in the progress. We need this done, and I have a long track record of working with city departments and interdepartmentally from my council and commission work. We certainly already have a lot of data, and we are making continual progress, and decisions and capital choices are being made with our sustainability goals driving them, but we need to be checking in and held accountable. A great example actually passed in first reading last night at the City Council, where we gave the necessary authorization to lease the rooftop space on 3 of our 4 elementary schools that have new roofs. And this is for solar photovoltaic arrays. This is also a great example of how we can work together as a community, because 2 residents are actually funding this installation, as they have on some of our other buildings and nonprofits. So we have the energy and the carbon saving estimates for those arrays. And what the people need to know is how that factors into these goals. So as we make continual progress, we should be documenting it. We should be celebrating it at times. I think that's appropriate too, particularly with a partnership like the one I just described. And we also need to be using those metrics for accountability.
Thank you very much. So I want to do a very quick follow-up question, and I'll start with Gina Louise, but I also want to bring it back to Mark Warner as well, which is in both cases, you answered questions about the responsibility of city government for the things that it controls. And yet, of course, as Mark pointed out, the much larger impact is by the rest of the city of Northampton, all of us residents and businesses. So are there aspects of what you're talking about that's mostly city or government focused that you could direct towards actions that would involve the rest of the residents and the businesses in town? And I'll give you 1 minute each on that.
Okay. Well, as you know, our municipal goals come sooner before our citywide goals. And you're right, the things that the city can control are easier for us to document. But as we're, aggressively pursuing different grants and programs to help residents also achieve these goals, we should be factoring that into those metrics. And so we need to figure out how to incorporate, maybe that means we have, we have two different timelines, and we're showing on the municipal side, and, we know that we've committed to getting there sooner, but we're also showing the incremental work that we're doing on the residential side and on the business side to make sure that we meet those goals, hopefully ahead of schedule. And along with that, we can be informing the public about whatever programs or ways that we can help them achieve those goals for their own properties.
Great, thank you. And Mark Warner, I wanted to give you the same question.
Yeah, sure. I mean, ideally, you would have some type of carbon tax, but that's not something that works on a municipal level. This is one where you would be taxed on your greenhouse gas emissions, and all the money that would be raised would be distributed back to all the citizens of whatever the jurisdiction is, but that doesn't work on a municipal level. But there are two things that municipalities can do. One is you can change ordinances and zoning codes. You can try to make a smaller houses as a second property on a lot. This was not done with the infill zoning or the second house allowance several years ago, that is now affecting sort of the size of the households. The bigger the house, the more greenhouse gases in general. So you can do that. You can change some of those things to strive to more efficiency and hope you deal with it not being more affordable. The other one that I really like is just to make it really an issue in terms of publicity. This is one where you can use your role as being an inspiration. Look, if you have the funds to go and put in a solar array, if you have the funds to go and put in the fan system, the geothermal program, go ahead and do it. Encourage them, highlight the achievements we're making. We're going to have a race with Amherst. Let's get out ahead. Okay,
that's great. Thank you. So, and Shana Fishel and Roy Martin, I promise I'll do follow-ups on some of your other questions, but now I'm going to move on to round two. And actually, it's going to start with a question for Mark Warner. This question should be very much in your wheelhouse. Automobile transportation is responsible for a large portion of Northampton's greenhouse gas emissions. While transitioning to electric vehicles can play an important role, reducing car dependence can more cost-effectively and more rapidly reduce transportation emissions. What are your plans in the short and long term to enable and encourage non-automobile modes of transportation in the city? And it's 2 minutes.
Okay. There are two types of alternatives you can promote. One is with the bicycling programs. The electric bikes that the city has, I think, are terrific. It's actually done much better than I thought it would. And I'm encouraged to see that it's being spread out in more neighborhoods. Tied with that is putting on more bicycle lanes so you have more access to more parts of the city. Let's pave the route up to Williamsburg. Let's get a circumferential around part of the downtown as well. Do these things. Let's have something that goes from Bay State Village out towards the rail line, toward the Manhan Trail out to East Hampton. These would provide accessibility and a means to use them. Don't go for the most expensive options. Don't go and put the bells and whistles on when you can divert the money to things that just expanded, to have greater accessibility, to expand those trails. That's the goal. The other piece with it is public transit. But here you have to recognize there are some real constraints. The idea of being able to go and put a trolley down Main Street or to go and increase the number of buses is something that is an ideal, but it's not really realistic. Even if you had the capital money to buy the buses, and even if that came from the state or federal grant, it would still come down to the municipality and the state and the local area, the regional area, to go and fund operations. The fares will never do it. And you will be spending so much in terms of your budget to go and support the operations of that system that you will have to forego other things that are more meaningful. Now, I know that there are a lot of people who will say, look, if you put the transit out there, people will use it. Well, this is what I've been doing for 29 years as Warner Transportation Consulting. Agencies all around the country have asked me these questions, and a lot of times I applaud them and say, yep, you got a winner here. But I've also had to tell them, no, you will never, ever, ever qualify for federal funding. There just is not enough ridership to support it.
All right, well, that's a dose of reality. The next question is for Shana Fischel. And you actually referred to this a little bit in your opening statement. So several recent issues in Northampton related to climate and the environment, the redesign of Main Street, the reconstruction of Warfield Place, and the issue of outdoor light pollution have left some residents feeling frustrated by the ways the city engages with the public, sets timelines, and makes decisions. What lessons have you learned from these experiences, and what changes will you make to ensure that evidence-based public input and collaboration are central to reaching our urgent climate and environmental goals?
Thank you. I think that these examples that you brought are pivotal issues and are example of how our municipal leaders have failed us. One of the reasons that I'm running for mayor is because I believe that the city does not genuinely, equitably engage with the public. Ever since I announced my candidacy and spoke to residents and other stakeholders across the city, it is obvious that this feeling is pervasive in all neighborhoods, not just with these examples, but like I said, with uncharacteristic luxury developments in Bay State Village and the threat to the church. Everyone is sick and tired of being ignored, and I'm here to champion the change that you're asking for, that we all are asking for. We have a great lighting code, which is not implemented for no good reason. We have an expert in the field pushing for change, and he keeps being ignored. What happened on Warfield Place is heartbreaking and lacks all sense of humanity in government. If you listen to algorithm more than the will of the people, and we do not take human subjectivity into account, we are no more than machines. Main Street redesign should have started a decade ago, and it did, within the circles of those that know. It should have had a 3-phase plan for infrastructure: outreach of assessment of risk, needs, and stakeholder mapping, generating a stakeholder committee to establish multidisciplinary coordination and planning, and 3, participatory engagement with residents to finalize a plan and assess final wishes and risks. I would not let infrastructure investment divide our community as it has recently. Rather, it should be a point of imagination and forward-thinking solutions. If better and earlier communication would be established, led by residents and not appointed at chairs, and that's the administrative code I would change. We would be able to listen to the wealth of knowledge and expertise of our residents who capitalize on human potential towards common goals.
Thank you very much. So the next question is for Gina Louise Shara, and it is a related question, and feel free to respond directly to some of the things that were just said, because I think it's related. So here's the question. Mayoral advisory commissions exist to tap resident expertise, coordinate among departments, and recommend the best possible city policies, plans, ordinances, and practices. It is not uncommon for resident commissioners to give many hours of in-depth topic research and to chair a commission. Recently, however, the City of Northampton changed its administrative code so that 3 commissions, the Energy and Sustainability Commission, the Transportation and Parking Commission, and the Urban Forestry Commission, are chaired exclusively by a municipal staff rather than by a commission member voted by their peers. So first, do you support this code change? And please explain why. And 2, what will you do as mayor to ensure that commissions are able to set agendas based on resident concerns, values, and expertise, and effectively provide unfiltered and meaningful advice and guidance based on evidence and expertise?
Thank you. As stated in the question, we need our commissions to provide unfiltered and meaningful advice and guidance that's based on evidence and expertise. Under the charter, the mayor is given the authority to organize these multiple member bodies how they believe, which our current mayor did. These are 3 advisory commissions. 2 of them are blended bodies with department heads, residents, and elected officials on them. I have personal experience with one of these, as I was the vice chair of the Transportation and Parking Commission for 4 years. That commission wasn't in any recent memory that I can remember, maybe ever chaired by one of the resident members. It was always a city councilor. I actually asked members if they were interested in chairing during one of the sort of term changes, and no one was. The administrative code change happened after I was no longer on the commission, but I think that the change there in that commission actually has helped the working of it, which is evidenced by the fact that they have worked through the traffic calming requests that were severely backlogged there for years. And residents' requests are now being addressed more quickly. In my experience, having chaired and sat on many city bodies, the chairs do a lot of work and work collaboratively with the whole entire body. So I don't assume a loss of unfiltered advice and guidance from the change, but I do know that that is an absolute real concern. As mayor, I want to hear from the remarkable resources we have in the experts in our community. That wealth of knowledge is one of our great strengths, and the generosity of time and talent that community members give to improve our city, either directly sitting on volunteer committees or advocating and advising, is one of the things that I believe makes Northampton really special. And is one of the reasons why I give so much of my time doing this work, is to be in collaboration with those community leaders. So I pledge to you that the directive I would give all department heads is to always seek out unfiltered advice and guidance, not silence it. And I will work with our resident commissioners, and if needed, make changes to the leadership structures of those committees or commissions. And if the mayor is actually ex officio member of these bodies, as mayor, I would make it a point to attend meetings, not every meeting, but some meetings, and would additionally check in directly with board and commission members so that I hear from them directly in an unfiltered way.
That's great. Thank you very much. And the last question in this round goes to Roy Martin. So, as you know, climate disruption disproportionately harms people marginalized by race, class, gender, and ability. And marginalized people are also less likely to hold elected positions, sit on commissions, attend public forums, and vote. If mayor, how would you meaningfully involve people most harmed by climate chaos and environmental degradation?
First off, I would make sure that every committee that I had would have some people of Spanish, right? Because we have a lot of Spanish here in town, right? We have a lot of Black people in town that are very put behind the 8 ball, you might say. They never asked anything. They never told, they were only told what to do. And that's not the right way to do it. All right, you got to have people from all the classes, all the races, and everything, right, involved in your city politics. Because if you don't have it that way, people are going to look at you like, well, you're a racist. You haven't got the right. I don't know the word for it, but I would say that yes, right. We got to have people from every branch and every part of society, right? Even the new people coming in, a lot of them would be helpful, right, with the boards. Like maybe we'd take a few Jewish people, right? The Jewish people in this city are very much under, from what I've heard, right? I don't know for sure, but what I've heard is that the Jewish people are not that much up on politics. So, right, I'm getting a little overboard here because I just don't know. I don't know just what you would do, right? Do you do everything you can do to bring all the classes of people together? That's all I can say about city politics. All right, a lot of it has been, the old white boy clan. That's all I can say.
Great. So I did say that I would try to do some, to come back with follow-up. So I want to actually use this opportunity to follow up with Shana Fishel and allow you to respond to the question that I asked Roy, but with only a minute, and perhaps tie that into some of the specifics that you were referring to about the responsiveness of city government to various populations.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So yes, in a minute, this is a packed question. First of all, I'm a very proud Jew, and I'm very proud to enter politics. And I think that we need to invest more in marginalized identities and empower them to be part of the local climate of government. One of my friends was on the Police Review Commission, a woman of color, but she left early on because she felt that there was agenda in there and that it was unpaid, very arduous and emotional labor. And oftentimes we expect that marginalized identities can just commit and invest themselves And we need to understand this in an intersectional lens. And intersectionality is coined by a woman of color, a Black woman, and we need to rely on the regional wealth of leaders of color. And like many of my colleagues here spoke about regional efforts, I think this is a way that we can shine and really highlight voices of different cultures and different identities and different goals.
Thank you very much. And that was a tough one to cram into 1 minute. So round 3 is an opportunity for any of you to answer a question you wish I had asked to you. So that you can pick from any of the questions we just did. And Gina Louise Shara will go first. And I can reread the question if you want me to.
Well, you don't need to. Actually, I was going to do the question that you just posed to Shauna. So I think we probably have it down. In co-creating and appointing the Policing Review Commission, which was just mentioned, I established a mandate that Black, Indigenous, and people of color account for the majority of its members. So we weren't just hearing from the majority, but from those most affected by policing. And this was the first body, to my knowledge, in the city that has ever had such a mandate. You may be familiar with the planned Resilience Hub, which will include a safe and comfortable day center and central connection point to services and resources for our houseless, vulnerable community, our most marginalized community members. The concept for the Resilience Hub came from hearing directly from our houseless community that a day center with consistent hours, where they could safely be, where they could store belongings, have facilities where they can be climate safe, was the #1 thing that they felt that they needed. Additionally, it will serve as a space that can quickly be converted to an emergency shelter. And that need has been identified because we know that we have increasing climate emergencies, and we'll need safe space for residents affected by them. So I also hope that space will serve as an important place for community building and helping people feel more involved and foster engagement. And I've been a strong supporter of that project and hope to see it through. As mayor, I also continue efforts to make sure that all communities in Northampton are heard and represented, especially our marginalized communities and our frontline communities. These past 18 months have been incredibly hard, but one gift has been that this time has forced adaptation of our public meetings to remote participation. Remote participation by residents was something that the council had begun to explore and was talking about how we could do it before the pandemic, but this of course forced everyone's hand and has shown us what is possible. Allowing people to participate remotely has absolutely increased participation and made it possible for people to be engaged that weren't before. So we need to foster that, and we also need to support municipal broadband access and make sure that everyone has equitable access to these expanded options for participating in our government.
Great, thank you. So Mark Warner, you're next, and I can reread any of the questions if you want that.
I'll take the same one, Ben, if you don't mind, because I think the issue too is measuring the outcomes. In my industry, transportation, there's a rule, Title VI, which applies to every transportation program that gets federal funds, which is essentially every transportation program. And Title VI is environmental justice, and it's a program with teeth. Anybody can make a challenge to it. If you ride any PVTA bus, as soon as you board, you'll see a poster that says how to file a Title VI challenge. And these challenges happen, and it's part of my job as a consultant to many transit agencies throughout the United States and to metropolitan planning organizations and state DOTs to always be conscious of Title VI issues and really suggest that if you do that, you will immediately get a Title VI challenge. Now, there are lots of Title VI challenges that happen and they don't have merit, but I can also tell them you will get a Title VI challenge. It has merit. You will lose. You will waste a lot of money and a lot of time. So this is something that would apply to any type of environmental program that goes on in the city of Northampton. The mandate I would have to department heads is not just recognize the goals we have as a city to cutting greenhouse gases or to making the city more resilient to climate change that does happen, but also that any measure we take, any program, any investment also has to be evaluated in terms of its environmental justice consequences. Look, Climate Action Now did this when it objected to the biofuels plant, the plant that went in around Springfield. The issue was, this is a community that suffers high rates of asthma, and why should all these pollutants be concentrated right there? It was, in fact, a climate justice. It was an environmental justice issue, and Climate Action Now was right to bring it. This is the same type of thing that I would apply here we're not going to have marginalized communities bear the brunt. All parts of the city would have to share these burdens equally.
Great, thank you very much. So Roy Martin, you can take any of the questions that were asked to other people, and I can reread them for you if that's helpful.
Well, let me think. When I read over the questions that were going to be asked, right, I wrote something down for number 2 question. All right. So I'm going to shoot it at you, and you tell me if that pertains to anything you'd like. All right. Yes, the youth of our city is the hopes of our state and federal governments. Our hopes of a long-lasting future and a sustainable earth is in the hands of our youth. Today's sons and daughters are our presidents and leaders of our country. Let's hope that they can all learn to work together as one to sustain our world long after we are gone. I mean, that was, the question number 2 that I had read on there, right? That's what I wrote down for the answer to that. So, shoot, you got something for me?
I can ask you a different question, and
Okay, go ahead.
I'll pause it here. So I'm just going to ask you a question that I hadn't asked before, but is worth looking at. Do you commit to fully funding the city's urban forestry program that is working to restore our shade tree canopy and buffer us against extreme heat and stormwater runoff, improve wildlife habitat, store carbon, and clean our air and water? And I'll give you the rest of that minute to...
Okay, right now for that, yes, right. But I would like to see some hardwood trees rather than the little ones that they're putting up there, which is most of them are water trees, right? It suck off water off the ground. They go up maybe 10, 15 feet. They start getting in the wires and everything, all right? And it takes 2 or 3 years for them to grow. Now, a good hardwood tree takes years to grow, gets a good cover, and a good sustainable tree. Now, with that, right, water runoff, right? The rain is water runoff. Now, our rivers are getting, how do you say it? The rivers are getting fuller, right, as noticed just recently. Right, when you look at the banks of the river down here, right, and you see all the runoff coming off the mountains and stuff. And people say, well, that's because of the snow and stuff like that. Well, it isn't just because of the snow. We have a lot more rain than we had in a long time. Okay, my minute's up.
Thank you. So I didn't get the answer. I would love to know just a very quick yes or no about fully funding the city's urban forestry program.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you very much. All right, Shana Fischel, you can answer any of the questions asked to the other members, and I can reread it for you.
Can you reread the transportation question, please?
Yeah, excellent. So automobile transportation is responsible for a large portion of Northampton's greenhouse gas emissions. While transitioning to electric vehicles can play an important role, reducing car dependence can more cost effectively and more rapidly reduce transportation emissions. What are your plans in the short and long term to enable and encourage non-automobile modes of transportation in the city?
Yeah. So first of all, like any other environmental policy, we have to be bold, forceful, and science-based. A couple of facts that I discovered about Northampton and how we're not coming forward is, like I said in one of my statements, that I want to progress towards a fully electric municipal fleet, and I commit to not buy any other guzzling cars before that's done. I went and did the math in our budget about how much we spend on gasoline and diesel, and it's $329,000 a year for our municipal fleets. Now that should be a data that I don't have to calculate, but it's in the front and center in the beginning of the budget, like all other resources that we're using. So that's in terms of the municipality. In order for the rest of the residents, I think that we can be wonderfully creative and really draw people to the city because of our alternative transportation. We can have things like motorized skateboards, segways, unicycles, hoverboards, other small battery operated solar panel, low speed vehicles that are not cars. We can introduce residents and visitors through rentals like a Valley Bike or zip cars to increase buy-in for these options. This is a vision towards more choices and fewer car, especially in our more congested areas. But in addition to that, I want to promote neighborhood improvement planning so residents and property owners can harness creative ideas and solutions to ensure walkability factors, to amenities. If I'm in Leeds, I don't want to travel all the way to Northampton to be able to buy supermarket goods. We have to have cultural hubs, green spaces, and services closer to where people live. So your travel distance to get things done and meet your friends is smaller. We must be bold as we think of how to achieve both environmental and road safety goals.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, so the last round, I'm going to ask the same question to all of you. So when asked, are we in a climate emergency? Northampton's political candidates invariably answer, yes, of course. Emergencies, however, require laser focus, the rallying of resources, and shifts from incrementalism to dramatic response. What is the most impactful thing you can do as mayor to execute the sort of urgent and bold action required to meet our climate emergency? And I'll go first to Roy Martin.
You would have to go first to me. What would I do first? All right, I think the first thing I do is make sure the city is cleaned up a little bit. Then, of course, we have some stuff to do with the rivers and straightening them out. And slowly, I can't think of anything exactly that we could do as a city to make things better for other cities or other communities around us. Yeah, we're all in the same boat, like I said before, right? I have no idea how to answer that question.
Fair enough. But I will put that question to Shana Fishel next anyway.
Thank you. So some of this is a repeat of what I said before. Every decision that needs to be intersection with climate justice, racial justice, and economic impact. We cannot divide those three topics, and all our decisions in the municipality needs to be through that lens. On the first day as mayor, I will issue a climate emergency declaration that will shape all municipal decisions and impact our budget, supporting an emergency speed transition to zero emissions. Our budget as a pivotal document must include a temperature check and health report of our city and our residents, indicating system balance, fossil fuel reduction, and renewable energy infrastructure production, as well as a report of the health of our people, our species, and our ecosystems. I will immediately reverse the administrative code so that residents can oversee the process of our city departments and hold leaders accountable towards aggressive climate action. I will build coalition across the valley so we can create a regional task force to combat the climate crisis, and thus encourage other municipalities to make the same crisis declaration so we can advocate for Western Mass climate needs. As many communities here have a right to farm, we have a social responsibility to make sure that our stormwaters and our climate does not impact our food production. I will stop buying fuel vehicles and move immediately towards renewable energy, pursuing finances for a wind turbine to fuel a green fleet. Overall, I commit to mobilizing the required resources and take effective action at the necessary scale and speed. And I know that with this climate emergency happened across the globe, and there hasn't been any town and municipality in the nation yet that had declared it. It's mostly in Europe. We can really be a model city, encouraging our nation to follow suit and using the federal and state money in this Green New Deal.
Thank you very much. So Mark Warner, again, what's the most impactful thing you can do as mayor?
I think the most impactful thing would be to put in place some management structures to highlight that this is a key issue of city government. And this is focusing on the goals that each department head would be obliged to go and put together. And each department head would also know that he or she is going to be held accountable for that at the end of the year. They would have to put together plans that say, here's what we can do this coming year. And this is something, here's where it may fall short. But if that falls short, it's going to be because of this circumstance that we can't control, we can't foresee right now. If every community wanted to put in solar arrays, there just wouldn't be enough solar arrays to go around for everybody. So that's more realistic thing that we have to consider. The other key piece I would do would be to emphasize that this is important to all residents in Northampton. This is where we can draw on our progressive attitudes. This is where we can draw on our pride in a healthy community and the type of environment that we like here in the city, the open spaces and the functioning of our New England seasons here. This is something that we can do to say that this matters to us. And by publicizing it and measuring it, putting a little chart on the side of City Hall, here's where we are, here's where we want to go, setting up a race with other cities in the community. Look how well Amherst is doing. Can we do better? Yes, let's do it. Those of us who have the means should be encouraged to go and put the heat pumps in, should be encouraged to go put solar arrays, look for alternatives, look to get transform their change to an electric vehicle, take fewer trips. The city can do what it can with its own facilities, its buildings, its vehicles. We can put in place ordinances to promote denser land use where that makes sense for broader city goals. But the key issue we're also going to have to do is encourage residents who can to implement these measures that they can do.
Great, thank you. So Gina, Louise, Shara, last to you.
Sure, thank you. If I'm elected mayor, the climate emergency will drive every action the city takes, how we redesign our downtown, how we plan our neighborhoods, how we build our buildings, how we protect our open space. We need to be very ambitious about our goals, and it has to be our relentless focus. We actually have some remarkable opportunities for massive impact that are coming towards us quickly, and I'm sort of surprised that we haven't talked about them at all. One is the American Rescue Plan Act funds that are coming. I can't, this is remarkable that we are actually getting federal money, and that federal money is appreciating that municipalities need to work on our infrastructure. So we have $22 million that is coming our way that is specifically for different kinds of infrastructure, and yes, to help mitigate some of the effects of the pandemic. But this is an opportunity to do some big projects that will have, lasting results for generations, but will have a really big impact on our climate goals. The other thing is our Main Street redesign. I really hope that Northampton can be really brave about this project. It is, we need to change our downtown to be more walkable and bikeable, and to have a continuous shade tree canopy. And we have the opportunity to do that. That's why I've been advocating to enhance option 3, which was my choice, but I would like to see it enhanced as Main Street for Everyone has been advocating for. And that is a change that will greatly impact not just our canopy, our shade tree canopy downtown, but also we need to, once that ground is open and we're doing that work, we have a remarkable opportunity to work on the infrastructure underground and make it more resilient, but also pave the way for some of meeting some of our sustainability goals with our infrastructure.
That's great. Thank you very much. So we now have about 25 minutes in which I'm going to try and ask as many questions from the audience as I can, and any one of you can volunteer to answer it, and maybe more than one will want to answer any given question. So the first question is, what do you see as the biggest threats to high value habitat in Northampton? And in what specific and structural ways would you direct our city to stem these pressures and conserve shrinking habitat for non-human residents of our city? And anyone can, I guess it looks like Shana would like to answer.
And do we get 2 minutes or 1 minute?
I think it is 2 minutes. So 2 minutes it is.
Okay, so thank you for that question. And I agree, we have to protect our habitats. And I keep on saying that I consider our water, our land, our lights, our air as stakeholders in our decisions. I come to this issue and I consider justice and inequality and human agency in the environmental system across the region. I will lead the decisions that consider all of the stakeholders that are natural and non-human. Considering habitat loss, I would assess and invest measures that consider destruction, fragmentation, and degradation of our habitats. We need to consider the habitat destruction, especially when rezone property lines, and consider the number of significant trees that are cut down and infill use. I want to create safeguards so developments do not fragment habitats and ensure we consider terrestrial wildlife habitats and waterways when we map out new developments. We need to ensure, we need to make sure that we fight against habitat degradation and protect the habitats from pollution, pollutants, and invasive species through ordinance that stop the use of chemical sprays, fossil fuel infrastructure reduction, and no biomass in the valley, as well as outreach and education so people and residents can take accountability as well. Other than assessing and mitigating, there needs to be a dynamic and consistent process. We also have to make sure that the harm humans do to the natural habitat, we must ensure that create a certified wildlife habitats throughout our city with places for flora and fauna to thrive. With every tree we cut down, we should commit to plant 10 or more trees in its place. We must include green spaces like not only have in Pulaski Park downtown. We have to introduce native plants in all the gardens around town. And wherever we see habitat shrink, we need to be forward thinking and use rooftops, homes, school, businesses, and every available space to increase how we share the land with non-humans.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to answer that question? Or should I go on to a next question? It looks like Gina Louise would like to answer.
Sure, thanks. The biggest threats to high value habitat are climate change and unsustainable development. As a city, we've been making land use policy to incentivize smart and sustainable development and to preserve and protect open space and habitat sensitive areas, but we need to do more. In addition to striving to make our zoning less exclusionary and to create more possibilities for housing, which is very desperately needed, another positive about creating more housing on existing lots is that it helps preserve open space, and there is less need to push out into our more open rural areas of the city for housing. We currently have over 6,000 acres of protected space with permanent restrictions on it, which is over 26% of the city. And Planning and Sustainability Department regularly brings forward to the council open space land acquisitions for a vote. I'm thankful that for as long as I've been on the council, those have largely been non-controversial and usually often unanimous votes. We have been aggressively trying to connect our wildlife corridors and expand our contiguous protected land for wildlife. And as I have on council, I would support and assist in those land deals as mayor and try to connect more of that space for wildlife. I also, believe that we need to move away from pesticide use in the city. And I, just this year, I worked with activists to try and stop mosquito spraying, which is non-discriminant spraying that the state wanted to do. So I will continue to work on things like that to protect our wildlife and all of us.
Thank you. Did either of the other candidates want to answer that question? No. Okay, so we can move on. The next question is, old natural gas pipes under Northampton streets have sprung thousands of leaks into our soil and air over the past 2 decades. In addition to the risk of gas explosions, unburned methane causes silent damage to human lungs and to street trees, as well as to the atmosphere as a potent greenhouse gas. Currently, there are 40 active gas leaks in Northampton, according to publicly available information. Other Commonwealth cities have formed gas leak task forces to educate the public about gas hazards, increase resident gas detection, and ensure the gas company makes prompt repairs and mitigates negative health and environmental impacts. As mayor, how will you improve the monitoring of and response to our gas leaks, and how will you help lead Northampton's transition away from natural gas? Anyone can answer that. Mark maybe wants to answer?
Sure. I mean, I'm up for anything, but I like the idea of what the other communities are doing. The task force with the utility would be an appropriate thing to do. Make it clear to the utility that this is something you want to go and expand the operation here in the city. You have to go and deal with these existing problems first. Before you go in, we have our greenhouse gas goals. Our natural gas pipeline, which is a greenhouse gas, of course, is leaking greenhouse gases. Look, before you have any further hookups at all, if we're going to allow that to any extent, let's make sure that you have a plan in place with clear metrics as to when you're going to do a clear timeline as to when it's going to happen to go and fix it. What are the technology? What are the tools you can use to detect them? And what are the methods you can use to go and seal them? Does it need digging up? Can you put in some more flexible pipe in the existing conduits? So find out what are the choices here and just mandate it. This is all of these utilities are using the public streets or the public wires on our utility poles, that they do have to conform to our rules. We do have a say. So meanwhile, the Public Utility Commission in Boston can also control this. So working with utilities, working with the Public Utility Commission, Department of Public Utilities, we can go and make sure that these issues are dealt with. These leaks are a problem. Let's not let it fester.
Does anyone else want to address this question, or should I ask the next one? So Gina Louise.
So I would say that I would like to say my first goal would be to get a response from Columbia Gas, now Eversource, but I don't have high hopes for that, even as mayor. As the chair of Community Resources Committee in 2018, I sent a letter to Columbia Gas asking them just about this question, asking them to provide data to back up their claim that they still needed to build an additional gas line, and also to ask them to evaluate our conservation efforts, because we had tried working with them to address gas leaks throughout the community, and which we felt, if that was actually happening, obviously our gas use would be less. Additionally, there was a moratorium. So an upside of the moratorium is disallowing new services. We as a community were forced to seek alternative sources of energy. So it clearly made sense that we were using less gas. And so by our reasoning, we expected that our natural gas use had decreased and access to gas had been capped at where it was, and there was no need for this additional line that they're asking for. So needless to say, I never received a response to that letter. So I would absolutely support a gas leak task force, because Lord knows we're not going to be able to trust them to work on this with us. And so that is something that I would be very happy to implement.
Great. Shana would also like to answer the same question. Great.
Hi, sorry, I lost the connection for a second. So I'm assuming I have the question, and I'm assuming it's a natural gas question, right?
Do you want me to read the question again for you?
No, I'm
Or-
fine. We're short on time, so that's fine. Yeah, so first of all, I do want to say that I wholeheartedly will support a gas leak task force in the city. And I think that there's many committed residents in the city that want to create task force for different climate forward thinking and action. And I think that we have to harness that potential right now. As well as include I want to include participatory budgeting as a way to reflect some of our changes of infrastructure moving towards green energy and involve the residents in those decisions. We all know that natural gas is highly polluting fossil fuels, and economic resources are better spent on efficiency and renewable energy. Investment in natural gas does not incentivize our move towards renewable energy. So while we have to safeguard from gas leaks and make sure that we ensure the safety of the community, we need to invest in building new green infrastructure. We need to immediately make every effort to focus on renewables. And with many federal incentives to move towards renewables, as mayor, I will join the effort and increase federal regulation of natural gas wells to reduce leaks and implement safety measures in our city, by including also neighborhood improvement planning in the way we do business, so residents can safeguard their own neighborhood and increase residents' partnership with the city. We need to update our outdated technology, but make sure that it's going towards the future and not just fixing the past. We need to think about how we power our homes, how we have heating and cooling and electricity system combined, and how we power our businesses, municipal buildings, and schools to make it also more incentivized, to create incentives for new business ownership to come to our green town. We need to invest heavily in renewables, such as wind, solar, geothermal, second generation biofuels, and we can do this if we declare a climate emergency in our town and create a green new municipal deal.
Thank you. Roy Martin, I want to give you an opportunity to answer that question if you want to, or I can ask a different question.
I do want to. If anybody remembers, a few years ago, there was a house in Amherst that the gas had a gas leak, and it blew the house right apart, right? The husband come in, turned the light on. When he turned the light on, it blew him right out the front door. So anytime there's a gas leak like that, I think that the gas company ought to be digging that up and fixing that. I think actually what I think is we need new gas lines. If we're going to keep going with gas, new gas lines under the city, all over the city, everywhere there is. Because, yeah, it's costly, but how much is the company getting for the gas that we're buying from them? And, they're getting a good pay for that. So, there's that house there. There's a house over in Springfield that blew apart because of gas. Right? There's a few around. And what have we done about if we have a gas leak? Nothing. They don't dig it up. They don't repair it. Right? They've done nothing. So what we got to do is put it to them that if you're going to be in our city and you're going to have gas in our city, you're going to take care of them lines. And if there's any leaks, you're going to dig them up and fix them. That's what I got to say.
That's great. Thank you. So this leads well to the next question. As Roy's bringing up this idea of replacing all of the gas lines, this question kind of looks in the opposite direction. Would you consider filing a home rule petition to the legislature so that Northampton could disallow any fossil fuel combustion in new buildings or substantially renovated buildings, as other communities have done? And any one of you can answer that. Gina Louise wants to answer the home rule.
Yes, I would absolutely consider it. We've led with other home rules for important things that we've done, like representation on the Housing Authority, expanding voting, and I would certainly consider a home rule for this. In conjunction, I would pursue net zero building grants. We can't forget also about our lower and fixed income residents. We have to make sure that we have protections for residents with less resources. And I will aggressively pursue any state or federal programs that will help the city and residents convert to renewable energy and not just carbon neutral energy. This is something I would do also in addition to pursuing climate vulnerability grants. We've taken advantage of programs like Heat Smart Northampton, Solarize Northampton, and we have to make sure that we're providing residents with whatever resources available, because it will be the only way to reach our goals if we're all making this conversion. But it can't create a hardship, or we can't be setting standards for people that they can't meet. That doesn't help us meet our goals. An exciting thing was just announced this week. A state commission on clean heat has been announced. So I think that there's hope that the state will start really needing to take this need seriously, and that would help.
Mark wants to answer. I'll open up for you then.
Okay, just a brief response too. One of the issues of dealing with any focus, and this goes back to the laser focus on climate change, it doesn't suggest that this isn't a key issue. It doesn't mean that you have to just look, but it doesn't mean that you want to disregard it. But you also have to look at the other issues that are important to the city as a whole. If you did go and insist that any new building met your climate goals, you could conceivably be adding so much to the price of a building that you undermine your ability to go and meet your other goals. We want to go and have more affordable homes. We want to go and have more homes that's accessible to the people who are currently homeless. We want to make Northampton a welcoming home where people of all incomes can move into. Maybe that means that there's going to be an apartment building put in downtown. We've also had a couple on Pleasant Street. They've been terrific additions. Maybe it needs more. And what would be the added cost to that if it had to go and meet renewable energy only mandates? So if you are going to go and do one particular program, let's understand what it means for all of our goals. Again, this doesn't mean we have to go and abandon our climate goals. We can't. This is an emergency. But it may be that the best thing to do is to phase it in, do it for certain buildings, and then as the technology advances, go and expand it to the rest of the city. So before I would go and look to go and apply anything broadly, let's make sure that this fits with our whole community goals in other areas as well.
All right. Does anyone else, Shana would also like to take it?
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I think that I agree with what Mark said, that we can't make it inaccessible to residents. So that means that this needs to be a long-term plan. And when we reach a municipality of net zero by 2030, that the infrastructure is in place for residents to choose to follow that pathway, because we make it easy and accessible and attainable for them. Part of that is committing to reducing our residential carbon footprint. So if we can't do it by green materials and green emissions, it still means that we have to assess the density of our residential areas, the size of new homes that are built and currently lived in. And we need to move towards renewables, heatings and cooling in the homes and office, but we can't expect them to do it ourselves, the residents themselves, and we have to make sure that they have access to that. I will aggressively go after landlords and property owners and developers that misuse our zoning ordinance and strip land from her resources, as well as terminate landlord misalignment that hinder energy renovations to their property. We need to move towards combined heat and power distribution and solar energy, and bridge the gap and support home ownership who wish to pursue this goal across the city. We have many residents and many business owners that have this goal, but it's not attainable because of finances or infrastructure. So we must lead the way and create public-private partnership to make sure that this is accessible and incentivize them. It's all about accessibility. People want to choose the better choice if they have access to it. And we need to lead the way as a municipality and city leaders. Thank you.
Oops, there we go. Okay. So I have some more audience questions and a little bit of time to ask them. I'm going to ask a quick one. I'm wondering what your plans might be for brownfield sites in the city, particularly on King Street, for example, the old Honda dealership site. I want to take that question. I will ask a different question. So most mammal and most pollinating insects are nocturnal, and 80% of migrating birds migrate at night. A naturally dark night is their habitat, and light pollution destroys that habitat, just like draining the water from a wetland. Light pollution is also a pure waste of money and energy, causing greenhouse gas emissions to shine light into the sky. As mayor, how will you stop and reverse the growth of light pollution in Northampton? Does anyone want to take it? Shana will take that.
Yeah, so I remember about 5 years ago, I went to city council, or it was a town hall, I don't remember, and Jane Lawrence came over and talked about this, and I'm amazed that 5 years later, he's still coming to city council and talking about this. And we have a wonderful dedicated group of Northampton Dark Skies that have been forcibly talking to as many municipal leaders as they can in order to enforce the already established lighting code, but it has not been changed. So I would immediately enforce it and make sure that it's taken up. For example, every time that a light pole comes down because of any infrastructure to the street, we need to make sure that we put a light pole in place that is in conjunction with Dark Skies initiatives. And I know that there's a bill in the State House or that as well that will encourage our aggressive forward thinking in this matter. We have to make sure that we listen to the complaints of the neighbors, because we might not be able to assess all the lighting poles all around the city. But if a resident calls the municipality and reports to the special lighting task force committee that we need to establish that their light is shining in their backyard, then we need to take that seriously and go and change that light post. Over time, we also have to acknowledge that we need to make sure that we have an incentive to do that. Currently, we pay a blanket sum of electricity to National Grid, no matter how much electricity we use. So there's no incentive as a town to switch our lighting codes. However, we need to think about the climate and the earth and not just money figures. And we have to push our leaders in the Senate and the House and the state and federal to make sure that there are incentives in place and there are funds in place, and that municipality doesn't have to rely on only corporate electric companies, but that we have, like I said, our own renewable energy, so it's cost efficient for us to transition.
Thank you. So we have a fairly short amount of time, so Mark Werner, take this one.
Oh, okay.
If you want.
Sorry. Oh, just I won't even take 2 minutes, 15 seconds. Look, there are some things, if we can get more efficient bulbs, if we need to put the cones on the lights so that they shine down instead of up into the sky, let's go and do that. The investment in these isn't all that much. Let's also recognize, though, that Florence Road at night is already really, really dark. So it may be that any light is inconvenient for insects, but a really dark street may be inconvenience for motorists. So we have to balance those goals together. Let's find the optimal points there where we can go and get the benefits for the species and nocturnal species that need it, the health benefits for humans. But let's be careful about how we implement a lot of these programs.
Great. Gina, Louise, you also want to answer? Okay.
I will be quick. I was actually just talking to Northampton City Lights recently and to Dr. Lowenthal, and I asked specifically if they felt that our ordinance, which actually was written back in 2006, was strong, and their feeling was actually no, that it really needed updating. So I would vow to work with them to update it.
Great. We have enough time to ask a yes/no question. Will you commit to eliminating angled parking in the Main Street redesign plan? And I guess I'll do a round robin. So I'll go to Roy Martin first.
No. No, I know, because the people downtown in the businesses don't want it. They don't want to change the downtown because they're not going to have business. They just change it in Chicopee.
Okay, I'm trying to keep this as a yes/no question, so I'll go to Shana Fishel next.
I think I actually would like to explore backwards angle parking like they have sometimes in California, but I'm also used to parallel parking, so I think that there needs to be more community assessment. I do not have a clear answer to that. And I do want to add something before the end. I'll let that question out, but there's we got an email from Principal Caldwell from JFK about a global climate strike tomorrow. So if I can just read his email quickly before the end.
I want to give the others the chance to
before
answer
the
them.
end of
But we'll post everything. So Gina, Louise, Shara?
Absolutely, yes. And if I could just say really quickly, well, first of all, we've already tried backwards angled. It didn't work very well. But very quickly, I asked a historian friend to look for images for me for how far back we'd use angle parking, and he found a picture in 1918. So I really believe that this is not just a once in a generation or a lifetime, this is once in a century opportunity to change how we do this.
Great, thank you. And Mark, in the last few seconds.
Could have been pulling horses back in 1918. But I don't think you can make commitment now. There haven't been enough studies to find out what the parking needs are in any of the options.
Okay, well, thank you all very much for a lively debate or discussion. Thanks to our candidates and the large number of audience members who joined us tonight. Also, thank you to Northampton Open Media for live streaming and recording this event. All questions, including those not asked live during this forum, will be forwarded to the candidates, giving them the opportunity to answer in writing. Their answers will be posted at climateactionnowma.org. Please remember to vote in Northampton's primary election on September 28th, and remember to vote in the general election November 2nd. Thank you all very much for participating.